Have you ever noticed how certain phrases a man uses can reveal far more than what appears on the surface? Picture yourself at dinner with someone who keeps repeating, "I really don't care about her," while talking about his ex, yet he's brought her up 3 times in the past 20 minutes. According to Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, when someone denies something too insistently, they're actually revealing the exact opposite. The unconscious mind, Freud tells us, cannot lie, and when a man becomes obsessed with someone, his language becomes an open book for those who know how to read between the lines. What you'll discover in this video could forever change how you interpret words. I'll reveal 6 specific phrases that, according to Freudian theory, betray hidden obsession. Get ready to recognize these signals not only in others, but perhaps in yourself as well. If you want to continue exploring the secrets of human behavior through Freud's eyes, subscribe to the channel. The first signal we'll analyze involves one of the most common and seemingly innocent phrases. The first phrase that betrays deep obsession is apparently the most harmless: "I never think about her." When a man repeats this statement about someone, Freud teaches us that the exact opposite is happening. Imagine this scenario: you're talking with a friend who ended an important relationship 6 months ago. During conversation, you casually mention his ex-girlfriend, and he immediately responds, "Oh, her. I never think about her, really. She's completely out of my life." But then, over the next 30 minutes, he continues making indirect references to her, their shared habits, places they used to go together. According to Freud, this is a perfect example of the defense mechanism called denial. The man's unconscious is completely absorbed with this person, but his rational mind, the superego, considers this obsession unacceptable. The result? Compulsive denial that betrays exactly what he's trying to hide. Freudian theory explains that psychic energy cannot simply be eliminated. When we try to repress a thought or feeling, it doesn't disappear but manifests in different ways. In the case of denied obsession, repressed energy emerges through continuous assertions of the opposite. The more a man insists, "I never think about her," the more likely that person occupies significant space in his internal world. It's as if the unconscious is screaming, while consciousness whispers lies to itself. The key to recognizing this signal lies in observing the frequency and intensity of denial. A man who has truly moved on doesn't feel the need to constantly reaffirm it. True indifference manifests through silence, not through excessive protests. This mechanism also reveals deep internal conflict. Part of him knows he's still emotionally involved, but another part refuses to accept it. It's a battle between conscious and unconscious, fought through words. Have you ever seen this pattern in yourself or someone close to you? The next phrase we'll analyze is even more subtle, but equally revealing. It concerns how an obsessed man talks about the future. The second phrase that betrays hidden obsession actually sounds noble. "I hope she's happy." Duh, but beware, because behind this apparent magnanimity often hides a complex psychological mechanism Freud called reaction formation. Imagine meeting a man who, when talking about the person who obsesses him, constantly repeats how important it is that this person is doing well. The important thing is that she's happy. "I hope she finds what she's looking for. She deserves the best." Beautiful phrases, apparently selfless, but often hiding their exact opposite. According to Freud, reaction formation is a defense mechanism through which the unconscious transforms impulses considered unacceptable into their opposite. When a man feels anger, jealousy, or desire for control towards someone, but considers these feelings morally wrong, his psyche can completely flip them. The result? Excessive expressions of benevolence that sound almost suspicious in their perfection. A truly indifferent man doesn't feel the need to constantly elaborate wishes of happiness for someone who, according to him, is no longer part of his life. The key to recognizing this mechanism lies in observing the intensity and repetitiveness of these wishes. When someone continues emphasizing how much they want another person's well-being, they're often fighting against opposite impulses. It's as if they're trying to convince themselves before anyone else. Freud observed that our true feelings emerge through what we don't say directly. A man obsessed with someone rarely expresses his anger or frustration openly. Instead, he transforms it into excessive kindness that becomes almost performative. This mechanism also reveals deep guilt. The man knows, unconsciously, that his true feelings aren't as pure as he'd like, so he compensates through exaggerated expressions of altruism and detachment. Reaction formation is particularly common in relationships that ended badly. When someone has hurt us deeply, admitting anger can feel like defeat. It's easier to transform it into forced blessing. Another important clue: these happiness wishes often arrive without anyone asking for them. It's the man himself who feels the need to express them, as if it were a mantra to keep his true feelings at bay. Have you ever found yourself making excessively generous wishes to someone who had hurt you? The next phrase we'll examine reveals an even deeper aspect of obsession, the need for control masked as concern. The third phrase that reveals deep obsession is insidious, because it seems to arise from noble sentiment: I worry about her choices. But Freud teaches us that behind this concern often hides a need for control that cannot be expressed directly. Imagine this scenario: a man who continues commenting on life decisions of someone who, according to him, is no longer part of his emotional world. I don't like who she's dating now. She's making wrong decisions. Someone should make her understand she's ruining her life. Phrases that seem born from concern but reveal the deepest emotional involvement. According to Freudian theory, when we cannot have direct control over a situation that obsesses us, psychic energy finds other channels for expression. Concern then becomes a socially acceptable way to remain involved in someone's life. This mechanism is particularly revealing because it shows how obsession is never passive. It's not simply about thinking of someone, but wanting to continue influencing their life, even from distance. The obsessed man cannot accept no longer having a voice in the other's decisions. Freud noted that the need for control often masks fear of abandonment. When someone exits our sphere of influence, continuing to worry about their choices is a way to maintain connection, even if unidirectional and often unwanted. Obsessive concern is recognized by specific signals. First, it's disproportionate to the actual relationship that exists with the person. Second, it focuses on aspects of the other's life that don't directly concern us. Third, it's accompanied by urgency, as if it were our duty to intervene. Another important aspect is that this concern often expresses itself through judgments. She's making the mistake of her life. She doesn't understand what's best for her. These judgments reveal unconscious arrogance, the idea that we know better than the other what's right for their life. Freud called this phenomenon superego projection. When we cannot exercise direct control over someone, we project our moral sense onto them, as if it were our job to guide their choices. Obsessive concern is also a way to avoid facing our true feelings. It's easier to say, I worry about her, than admit, I can't accept that she chose someone else, or it makes me angry not being important in her life anymore. Have you ever noticed in yourself this need to worry about choices of someone who says they don't matter to you anymore? The next phrase we'll analyze touches an even deeper nerve comparison. The fourth phrase that betrays hidden obsession reveals almost stalker-like observation masked as neutral observation. She's very different from how she was before. Udom. When a man makes this statement, according to Freud, he's revealing that he continues carefully monitoring every aspect of that person's life. Imagine this situation: you meet a man who tells you in detail how a certain person has changed in recent months. She never dressed like that before. She never used to go out Friday nights. She was never so extroverted on social media. information requiring a level of attention and observation that completely contradicts any claims of disinterest. Freud teaches us that psychic energy from obsession must find apparently rational outlets. When we can no longer have direct access to someone's life, we become compulsive observers. Every change becomes significant. Every novelty requires interpretation. This behavior reveals several deep psychological mechanisms. First, difficulty accepting that people naturally evolve when we're no longer part of their life. Second, the need to find evidence confirming our theories about the past relationship. Third, unconscious hope that these changes are temporary or superficial. Freudian theory explains that when we're obsessed with someone, we tend to mentally freeze them in a specific version of themselves. Seeing this person continue growing and changing without us can be profoundly disturbing to the unconscious. The man making these observations often presents them as neutral or even critical. "I don't like how she's become. She seems like a completely different person." But these statements reveal intense emotional involvement. A truly indifferent person wouldn't notice these details, and especially wouldn't feel the need to comment on them. A particularly revealing aspect is when these comments concern positive changes. "She seems happier now. She has much more self-confidence." Even when expressed apparently positively, these comments often conceal frustration or jealousy. It's difficult accepting that someone is doing better without us. Freud observed that obsession often feeds on the need to remain relevant in the other's life. Commenting on their changes is a way of saying, "I still know you, I still observe you, I'm still present in your life, even if you don't know it." This mechanism also reveals profound difficulty accepting separation. When someone exits our life, we should naturally lose interest in details of their daily routine. Continuing to notice and comment on every change means separation never really happened, at least not psychologically. Have you ever found yourself knowing too many details about the current life of someone who should be from your past? The next phrase we'll examine touches an even more subtle aspect: the need to justify. The fifth phrase, revealing deep obsession, seems rational and mature. "It was inevitable it would end like this." Dedi. But according to Freud, when a man constantly repeats this statement, he's actually fighting against obsessive thoughts he cannot accept. Imagine hearing a man who, months or years after ending an important relationship, continues repeating how obvious it was that things would go wrong. The signs were there from the beginning. It never could have worked. It was written in destiny. Phrases that seem to indicate mature understanding of events, but often hide internal torment. Freud called this mechanism rationalization. When the unconscious cannot accept a loss, the rational mind constructs elaborate explanations to make sense of pain. It's an attempt to transform emotional chaos into an orderly and controllable narrative. True obsession reveals itself in the compulsiveness of this narrative. A man who has truly processed a loss doesn't feel the need to constantly repeat how inevitable it was. This repetition betrays the fact that, unconsciously, he continues ruminating on what happened. According to Freudian theory, when something obsesses us, we tend to create stories that protect us from true pain. Saying it was inevitable is easier than admitting "I miss her terribly" or "I still can't accept it's over." Rationalization becomes a shield against vulnerability. This mechanism also reveals a deep need for retroactive control. When we cannot control the present or future of a relationship, we at least try to control its past narrative. Convincing ourselves it was inevitable is a way to feel that somehow we had predicted and therefore controlled the outcome. A particularly revealing aspect is when these explanations become increasingly elaborate over time. The obsessed man continues adding details, perfecting the theory, finding new evidence of inevitability. It's as if his mind cannot stop working on that story. Freud noted that obsessive rationalization often prevents true grief processing. Instead of going through natural stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, the man remains stuck in a mental loop that gives him the illusion of having understood everything. The difference between true understanding and obsessive rationalization lies in invested emotional energy. Authentic understanding brings peace and closure. Obsessive rationalization brings compulsive need to repeat and convince oneself before others. This mechanism can also hide deep guilt. Saying it was inevitable is sometimes a way to avoid examining one's own role in events. It's more comfortable thinking everything was predetermined rather than facing one's own responsibilities. Have you ever found yourself repeating complex explanations about why something had to go wrong? The last phrase we'll analyze is perhaps the most revealing of all. The final phrase, betraying deep obsession, is paradoxical in its intensity. I don't want to know anything about her. According to Freud, when a man vehemently proclaims his total disinterest, he's often revealing exactly the opposite. Imagine this scenario. Someone casually mentions a person, and the man immediately interrupts, saying, "Stop, I don't want to hear anything about her," or "Please, never talk to me about her." Such intense reactions for someone who, according to him, no longer has any importance in his life. Freud teaches us that psychic energy from obsession is so powerful that even simple mention of the person can trigger disproportionate reactions. Compulsive avoidance then becomes a self-defense mechanism against one's own emotional vulnerability. This behavior reveals that the man knows unconsciously how emotionally involved he still is. He fears that even minimal information might reactivate thoughts and feelings he's desperately trying to repress. It's like an addict avoiding any contact with his drug. Freudian theory explains that when something truly obsesses us, we tend to develop what he called phobic avoidance. It's no longer just disinterest, but active fear of being exposed to stimuli that might destabilize us. A particular aspect of this mechanism is its performative nature. The man often announces his not wanting to know dramatically, as if he needed to convince himself before others. True indifference doesn't need such vehement proclamations. Freud observed that avoidance intensity is directly proportional to underlying obsession intensity. The stronger the denial, the deeper the emotional involvement being hidden. This behavior also creates a paradoxical effect. By so intensely declaring his disinterest, the man ends up keeping that person constantly at the center of attention. Every conversation becomes potentially dangerous. Every social situation requires vigilance. Another revealing signal is when these declarations of non-interest are repeated to different people at different times. It's as if the man needed to constantly reinforce this psychological barrier, fearing it might give way. Freud also noted that obsessive avoidance often prevents natural processing. Instead of gradually losing interest, the man maintains the person in a sort of emotional quarantine that paradoxically keeps them relevant. The avoidance mechanism also reveals deep self-knowledge. Unconsciously, the man knows exactly how vulnerable he still is. He knows that just a little information would be enough to collapse his entire defensive construction. This is perhaps the most powerful signal of all, because it shows how obsession can become so strong as to actively control one's sensory and social inputs. It's no longer just a recurring thought, but a force that concretely modifies behavior and relationships with others. Have you ever seen yourself react with such intensity to simple mention of someone? This behavior might reveal much more than you think. Freud taught us that the unconscious cannot lie. Our words, even when trying to hide truth, always end up revealing it. Recognizing these mechanisms doesn't mean judging them, but understanding them for what they are, attempts by the psyche to protect itself from pain. The final question I leave you with is this: now that you know these signals, what will you do with this awareness? Will you use them to better understand yourself or to decipher others? What city are you watching from? Comment down below.